I have been working with PrintBoss longer than I should probably admit. My goal for today is, if you've never heard of PrintBoss, I'm hoping to give you an overview or an idea of what the software can do. If you're already using PrintBoss, my hope is to show you some new features that maybe you weren't aware of in PrintBoss, and also possibly show you using some case studies, some different things to do with PrintBoss that maybe you hadn't thought of before. And when I try to think about this software and think about how I would describe it to somebody, I'm going to show my age here. What I came up with was a cartoon character from the 1970s called Mighty Mouse. I don't know if you're aware of Mighty Mouse, but he was this little tiny mouse with Superman powers, so able to leap a tall building in a single bound, able to move things around that were 300 times his size. And I feel like PrintBoss is very similar to that. This software, first of all, has a pretty low price point, relatively speaking, compared to other software. It's about $800 for the enterprise version. The standard version is about half that cost. And it has a very small footprint. And what I mean by that is the install is done on your server, and then there is a small piece that goes on your workstation. But it's very simple to install, probably about 5 minutes. And from there, it just gets very powerful. So what we're going to do today is talk about where PrintBoss started and where it's gone. And I'm going to cover a whole variety of things. We're going to talk about checks, where they started with the AP and payroll checks, and all of the different crazy cool things that they've done with it since then, including some new options that are hot off the presses with that. We're also going to talk about printing other types of forms, whether that be statements from accounts receivable, order entry forms, purchase orders, etc., and how PrintBoss can help you in that area. We're going to be talking about auto emailing and faxing and some new features that have come in with that. And then my last case study for you will be about something that I didn't actually think PrintBoss could do, and we were able to do it. And so what I'm hoping you're going to get out of this session today is, first of all, just the understanding what PrintBoss does, but also that PrintBoss can save you a ton of time and money, hopefully. So let's go ahead and get started here. I've actually got 4 windows open for you. So up at the top, I've got Sage 300. I'm actually in the 2014 version of Sage 300, but this works with any version of Sage 300, just so you know. I've also got my Windows Explorer open down at the bottom left, because we're going to look at some files that we're going to save. Up at the very top right, I've got my printer. I've got an HP OfficeJet, and I've actually got that paused, so I'm not sending a ton of paper to the printer that I don't actually need. And then the final thing that you'll see is on the bottom right section, I've got my email open because we are going to be looking at some auto emailing. Let's go ahead and jump in here. Actually, I want to jump back to one picture from our slide. So this is actually where PrintBoss started. The very first time I heard of PrintBoss was, wow, 18 plus years ago. I had a client who had their pre-printed check stock stolen. Somebody had broken in and stolen it. And I watched that controller go through all of this pain and angst of having to cancel her bank accounts and talk to the bank about how do we make sure nobody uses this and steal our money and etc. And PrintBoss came in, and what PrintBoss does, or what it originally did, was you could take a blank piece of paper. Pretty much this piece of paper just has 2 perforations on it and some color at the bottom. And PrintBoss would do the rest. So you had blank paper you were holding in your office, and PrintBoss would do everything you needed on the check, from the micker to printing the check to doing the advices. So let's go ahead and jump back into Sage 300 here, and I'm going to go into a payment batch that I've already created, and we're going to hit the Print Post button. Hopefully most of you are familiar with this, and we're in the print check screen, and all I've done is I've chosen a crystal report that has been formatted to work with PrintBoss. And if I hit the print button here, I have this going to preview. Now, just so you know, you don't have to go to preview. You could send it directly to the PrintBoss printer. But I wanted to be able to show you throughout this session what the report looks like before PrintBoss gets its hands on it, and then what it looks like after. So let me just change this so you can see the whole page. You'll see that there's very little information on here. It's essentially just the data you would need for a check. We've got the check advice, and we've got the actual check data down at the bottom. And I've actually done 2 checks here. The first one is about $256. The second one here is about $1,200. So I'm going to hit the print button and send it to the PrintBoss printer, which actually triggers the PrintBoss software to do something. And PrintBoss is sitting down here, and I want you to notice all the little flashy screens that have happened. First off, I got a little message down here telling me that my printer is paused. So clearly PrintBoss tried to send something to the printer. And then I've got a Windows Explorer screen that popped up here, and it's asking me to save a file. So let me move this over a little bit and just show you what PrintBoss is doing behind the scenes. I've got two copies of this PrintBoss check happening here. One of them is going directly to the printer, and the other one is going to what's called a positive pay file. And we'll take a look at that in detail after we take a look at the check. So let me just go ahead and save my positive pay file for a minute, and I will overwrite that existing file. And let me close my check and do the things I need to do to make sure that if you want to see it later, we can reprint it again. And now let's pop over to PrintBoss. And we're going to open up the work file here. And PrintBoss tells me the last PrintBoss form that it printed. So I'm going to go into the CA-AP2V. I'm going to browse and view it. And hopefully you can see my check on the screen. So remember again that when we looked at that crystal report, all you saw was the data. So the data here and some of the information for the check. PrintBoss has done all of this beautiful formatting. It's put a micker down at the bottom. One of the things that I love about PrintBoss is what it does with the top advice. It takes a snapshot of the bottom 2/3 of the form and it puts it up at the top. And again, I have formatted all of this, so these are options that the client has chosen. If you don't like that, we can do something else for you. I'm just showing capability here. One of the new security features that they've added is this little gray watermark down here with the dollar amount in it. So if you're concerned that somebody might be able to take this check and turn that 6 into an 8, for example, and somehow modify the written dollar amount as well, they still would have a very difficult time messing with that grayscale. Another thing that I've done to this check is you'll notice that I've put my John Hancock on it. One of the features I love about PrintBoss is if you're printing a lot of checks and you would like PrintBoss to put that signature on there for some smaller checks, and you only have to sign the ones that are for more expensive amounts, that is something we can do. We can set that up in the bank. And so if you look at this first check that was for $250, we have a John Hancock signature. But if I go to the second check, you'll notice that that signature is not there. Someone would actually have to sign this check. So lots of fun little features that they've added to where they started with the AP check. Let me just also, I want to quick jump in and show you a PrintBoss check, because again, I know there are some people on the phone call who have never seen PrintBoss. So for those of you who are a little bit bored with me right now, hang in. I'm getting to the new stuff very soon. I'm going to go ahead and view a payroll check that I ran earlier, and this is being paid out to Freddie Daniel Cervantes. And what you'll see here is, again, like that AP check, it's taken a snapshot of the bottom 2/3, put it up at the top as an advice, so you know exactly where you mailed that employee's check, and all of the information that would needed for a payroll check is on here. All righty, so let's jump into the other piece that PrintBoss did when I printed that check, which was the positive pay file. If you're not familiar with positive pay, this is a security feature that the banks have come up with recently to, again, help make sure that people aren't stealing money from you and faking checks. Many banks offer this service to you. What you can do is you can send them a file, upload a file every time you create an AP payment batch, and in that file you're essentially telling them, here are the checks you've cut, here's the amount they are for, and here's who they're being paid to. And then the bank will only authorize payment on those checks. And as you noticed, all I did was hit print in Sage 300. PrintBoss did the rest of it, and so it automatically created a positive pay file. So first we're going to look at this positive pay. Let me bring that over for you. And I've got this open in Notepad. It's a little hard to read, but essentially what this is doing is it's giving me a header record that tells me what company this file came from and what date it was generated. And then you'll see 2 lines in here which are the detail information we're sending about those checks. And this is all in the format that the bank asked for. And then the final row here is the total section, which is actually telling them the total amount that is authorized to be paid. Another fun little feature, something new that is just hot off the presses with PrintBoss, is the virtual credit card file, and this works very similarly. So imagine we've got some clients out there who have contracted with a virtual credit card company to pay all of their vendors. And so what they do is in Sage 300, they go ahead and they still generate a payment batch, and they tell it to, quote, print. But what they get as a result is not necessarily something that prints to the printer. Instead, they are getting a file that is in the format that the virtual credit card asked for. So let me again open this up here, and this one's a little bit easier to read. This is a comma-separated value file, and again, what you're going to see, it's very similar to that positive pay file. It's giving you a header record, some details about what you are authorizing that virtual credit card company to pay, and then the total section is giving you a grand total of the payment amounts within here. One of the reasons our customers really like this is, first of all, it saves them time and money. They don't have to print out checks, envelope them, stamp them, and get them to the post office. They're simply uploading a file. And then, of course, I probably don't have to go into a lot of detail about why a credit card could be valuable to you. Some of these credit card companies offer some great savings as far as discounts, points on mileage, and other things. That is something new that PrintBoss is offering, is this virtual credit card file. And then something I just learned about just in the last few weeks is PrintBoss is now including an FTP upload. What I mean by that is, if you're using the positive pay file or that virtual credit card file, PrintBoss in the past simply created the file for you. You still had to log into the site and upload that file. Well, now they're offering the ability that once you're past that testing phase with the virtual credit card company or bank, and you've got everything figured out, you could actually go into PrintBoss and set up an account and a login, and you could hook it to the bank that check uses, and it will automatically upload for you. This is part of what I love about PrintBoss, is more and more they're giving you this ability to hit one button and have a whole bunch of stuff happen automatically to save you time. All right, well, that was a really quick overview of the PrintBoss stuff. There are a couple little things I still want to hit on that. Let me just mention it to you. If you're doing a ton of checks, PrintBoss also sells what they call pressure seal check stock. What that means is that you can print the checks, send them through a folding machine, and it does everything needed so that you can just simply send them out. They don't have to go into a window envelope. The other thing that I want to mention to you is we've talked about checks, actual check stock and checks, and positive pay and virtual uploads. But the other thing that has become very popular is if you're using payroll, you might be doing a direct deposit for your employees. If that's the case, it is very simple to take that micker off of the check and turn this into something that we email out to the employee. So you still do all of the payroll transactions that you're used to doing in Sage 300, and when you hit the print button, it automatically emails out to your employees. All right, so let's move on to where PrintBoss has gone. They started with checks, but they've moved on to a whole lot more. And what we're going to talk about next is how to automate and make things more efficient, and I would actually argue increase your customer satisfaction. Here's what I mean by this. One of the very first customers that I did auto emailing with, they were mailing out 300 invoices a day. They were mailing or faxing order confirmations if their customers requested it, but they didn't want to do it if it wasn't requested. And they were handling tons of phone calls coming in from customers saying, where is my order? Can you give me my tracking number, etc. When we put in PrintBoss auto emailing, we did it with the order confirmation, the shipping confirmation, and we included tracking information on that, and their invoices. And they estimate that they saved $10,000 in that first year simply from the labor of not having to answer the phone as much, to printing, to postage and envelopes, and all of that kind of stuff. And so, boy, that was just a huge eye-opener for me on how such a little piece of software could have such an impact on a customer. So let's go ahead and jump in and see some of these examples that I've got for you. The first thing that I'm going to look at for you is one of my clients. This is something we have evolved over time. When they started with order confirmations, what they were doing is they would go in and they would print an order confirmation. They would mail it out to the customer. Then they would go in later and they would print a packing slip so the shipping department knew what to pack and they had something to put in the box. Then they were running a report for specific salespeople and emailing those to the salespeople individually so that the salespeople could follow up with the customers if they wanted to. It was a lot of labor and work. I should also mention this customer is still doing faxing. So if there's some of you out there thinking, wow, I can't believe faxing is even still part of the conversation, I still have a couple of customers who deal with that. At that time, they were literally walking over to a fax machine, typing in the number and having to load the fax and wait for it to go through, etc. And with the press of one button, we've been able to handle all of that in PrintBoss. So I'm going to double click on my order confirmation here. Again, I've got it set up to work with a PrintBoss crystal report that is formatted for PrintBoss. I've chosen 2 orders here that I'm going to print. And again, I'm going to send these to print preview so you can see them, but you don't have to go to preview. You could send it directly to PrintBoss and it would work beautifully. I'm going to hit the print button and wait patiently for it. Here we go. And the first thing they had me do is pop in a parameter here so they could tell me how many copies they needed, what type of information they needed. You'll notice that if I choose 1, I get a single copy for pricing. If I choose 2, I get a copy that just shows them costing. What we're going to do is copy 3, which is the standard one that they use. And I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. And now we're again looking at this crystal report inside the preview. What you're seeing at the top, these blue formatted pieces of data, those are all what we call PrintBoss triggers. And Crystal cannot talk to PrintBoss without at least having this very first trigger in it. The trigger tells it what PrintBoss form to use and some basic information about the document that I'm printing. I've actually also added some additional variables here. So you'll see a customer email variable. We've got an email variable that is handling the salesperson email address. We've got a variable here that determines if the pricing should be hidden on certain copies. And then as I mentioned, they do faxes, so we also have a variable for the fax service. And all of this logic is something that I sit down and go through with the customer in detail. So it's very much tailored to what each customer needs. I've printed 2 orders here. The reason is that the first one has an email address. The second one has a fax service number and no email. And I wanted to be able to show you what PrintBoss is going to do with both of those. So again, I'm just going to hit the print button. And we are going to, I'm going to click on PrintBoss so you can see all of the lovely little screens that are popping all over the place here. And again, I have purposely added pauses throughout this process so I can show you things. I hope that everyone understands that all I really have to do is set my print destination to printer, tell it to print to PrintBoss, and it would do everything behind the scenes if I let it. What it's doing right now is it's popping up and it's telling me that it wants to, it's looking for this fax service. It's telling me the fax number is blank, but most importantly, it's telling me I have not set up the fax service. I did that on purpose. I didn't want to try and send out faxes to random people. I thought that would be a bad idea. So I wanted to show and prove to you that the fax service would actually pop and run if I had set it up. Okay, let me go ahead and cancel that. And now we're getting up, we're seeing it spool through, and it was automatically printing, doing the printed copies it needed and the emailed copies it needed. So let me close my preview, and let's look at some of the different screens I've got open right now. First off, let's jump up to my printer here. This has actually the AP check that I showed you earlier and tried to print. So let me go ahead and delete that and get rid of that. These are actually copies of that order confirmation that went to the printer, and you'll notice that there are 2 pages each because I had 2 orders that I was working with. Let me open up PrintBoss and we'll go look at that work file and see what else it did. And again, it's going to show me which form that it used, so I'm going to go into the form in PrintBoss. I've got my 2 orders here. What I want you to notice is this printed status column. What this is showing, now I am not going into as much detail on what this customer did. That would take the rest of our lunch and learn session. So let me just hit this quickly. They've got 8 different copies in here. Some printed, some were suppressed, some were emailed, and then this little X down here, that's actually the copy that was faxed out. If I go ahead and click on my view, I'm coming into the first order, and it shows me that this is the office copy. And if I hit this little arrow here, it will actually spool through those 8 different copies of order number 1. So you'll see a salesperson copy, a shipping copy. Notice on the shipping copy, we have actually hidden pricing, and that was all based on some logic that they gave me. If I go to the packing slip, we have also hidden the pricing. If I go to the customer acknowledgement, we have this nice little gray bar here that says, thank you for your order. And I could continue to spool through and see a number of different copies here, including the salesperson copy. If I go to the second order, again, I could also spool through and see all the various copies that PrintBoss created within PrintBoss. From there, it creates the copies in PrintBoss, and then it decides whether or not it needs to send them out. I'm going to close this. So what we should have is, yes, if you look over at my email, you'll notice that I've had 2 emails come in while I was talking to you. The first one is, now just to mention, I put my email address in as the customer and the salesperson and so on, because I wanted to be able to see those emails and show them to you. Also because, again, I didn't want to bother other people out in the world with these crazy emails that I've got going here. So let me pop open the first one. This is the Happy Days order acknowledgement that is sent out to the customer. By the way, I've changed all my customers' names to protect the innocent in all of this. So no, I do not have a customer named Happy Days. If we double click on the attachment here, you will see the customer acknowledgement that that customer received. The other thing that happened was an email that went out to the salesperson. And again, the logic that this customer happened to use was they only had certain salespeople who wanted to see certain order acknowledgments that were over a certain dollar amount. In their case, the email isn't going out every single time to the salespeople. But here's what that salesperson email looks like. We've got a very simple email body. And again, if I double click on the attachment, what you're seeing is the salesperson copy that went out. Now, if you're a little ho-hum about how this email body looks on both of these, because they're very basic text, let me just mention to you, first off, that we can add variables into that email body and email subject so we can make those more personalized. It could say something about the customer, about their purchase order number, etc. Whatever is available to the report in Crystal is available to me for that email body. But if that still is a little ho-hum to you, let me jump into my next case study, which will be pretty quick here. We're going to go into an invoice. I have a customer. Now, in this case, I did not protect the customer's name and information. They gave me permission to use them in this instance, and the reason is that I want to show you what we did with their email body, including all of their logos and their cool graphics. And so the company is called Nortech. They are a computer company. They sell computer hardware. And if I go ahead and print their invoice from OE Forms, you'll see that we've put a beautiful little Nortech logo on here. This is actually conditional for them. They sell under 2 different company names, and so depending on which customer the invoice is going to, that logo will change. You'll also notice, again, I've got a PrintBoss trigger in here, and I've got an email variable assigned. I'm going to go ahead and hit the print button and send it to PrintBoss and close my print. And let's pop over into PrintBoss again. And again, it's showing me which form it last used. I'll open up the work file. And if I browse this work file, you'll notice that there were multiple copies of this invoice. The little period means that I've actually turned them off within the form. But you will notice that the last copy was emailed out. And so if I close this, and if my email is going fast at all, okay, now first off, I would just, to be clear, I would never put that as a subject line for any client. I just didn't happen to format it on my example for you today. Much more important is the email body. What I wanted to show you is that with very simple HTML information, we can create an email body that has logos in it. All of this, again, is conditionally formatted. So if this was a reason email body, these logos would be different for them. They actually have some conditional information that happens here as well. Based on who emails it out, it changes what phone number you'll see for the accounting department. And then one of the features that I love is we've added some hyperlinks to their website. So if I click on the home screen here on their little hyperlink, it pops me out to Nortec. All right, so that is auto emailing and faxing. We're going to talk about a couple more features at the end with that. But one of the other features in the Enterprise Edition that I want to talk about today is PDF file creation. And one of the most popular reasons that people ask me for PDF files has to do with the purchase orders. If you're familiar with the purchase order module, you may know that when you create a purchase order, if you make any modifications to that purchase order, the system does not track the changes that you've made, meaning there's nothing in Sage 300 that's going to show you what that PO looked like originally versus how you changed it. The other thing is once you receive product on that purchase order, if you went to go reprint the purchase order, all it's going to show you is the product that is still outstanding. And I had quite a lot of clients who want to be able to go back and see what did that purchase order originally look like, what were the changes we made to it, etc. And this is where PrintBoss came in handy for us. So what we did for them is in PrintBoss, you have the ability to go in and set up some PDF information and tell it, save it to a PDF file, and here's where I want you to save it, here's how I want you to name it, etc. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to grab the first two purchase orders in my Sage 300 system. And before I hit the print button, I have set up a location called PDF files in my Windows Explorer. And under it, what I want you to see is this folder here. What this is it's for a specific vendor. It's got their vendor number at the beginning, and then it's got the first 20 letters of their vendor name. I could have actually put the entire vendor name. I could do whatever I want here within reason. And if I go inside of that, you'll see that nothing is in that folder just yet. Okay. It's kind of like I'm showing you a magic trick, and I want to show you that there is nothing up my sleeves right now. So that's what that was. Let's go ahead and hit print on the purchase orders. And again, you're going to see a crystal report here where most of the formatting, including logos, is already in here. And I've got some PrintBoss triggers up at the top. Let me bump this up a little bit so we can look at those PrintBoss triggers. For this customer, they've got multiple people sending out purchase orders, and so they wanted to be able to change the signature in the email body so that it would say my name if I did the purchase order, Bob's name if Bob did the purchase order, etc. They also wanted to make sure that it had the contact information for the person who was sending out that purchase order. Again, you'll see an email to address and an email reply address. So again, I'm tailoring the email information to the person sending out the PO. And of course, we've got that purchase order trigger up at the top. Notice that that vendor information is included in that trigger. If I pop to my second purchase order, again, what I want you to notice is that this is for a different vendor. So we have a different vendor number and a different vendor name in here. I'll hit the print button and send it to PrintBoss and close my preview for you, get you back to the screen. PrintBoss is popping this up, and again, you don't have to have PrintBoss pause. It could go automatically do all of this stuff for you. I have built pauses into my demonstration so I could purposely show you things. So on that first purchase order, it recognizes that it's for this specific vendor, that I want it to go into a folder for that vendor, and it is naming the PDF the purchase order number. And I can go ahead and hit save. And then notice what it's done. It actually generated and created that second vendor's folder down here. That folder did not exist before we did this. It pops up again, and it's going to name that second purchase order, the purchase order number. And I can hit save. And once again, in the background, you see a Happy Days purchase order email going out. I'm going to do that one more time. And I'm doing this for a reason, not just because I'm so enthused by what I did that I feel like you should see it again. I gotta tell you, the only thing I don't like about Lunch and Learn sessions is I don't get to hear feedback from all of you. So I hope I'm being mildly witty and keeping you guys awake here. Let's go ahead and hit print again. And I'm just going to quick hit the print button. And again, we don't have to go to preview first. I'm just doing it to show you some stuff. Once again, it's popping up with that Intercontinental and PO1. And if I hit the Save button, this is the next screen that comes up. So imagine for a second that I hadn't put all of those pauses in place. If I literally just went in, told it to print the POs directly to PrintBoss, this is the first screen that would usually pop up for me. And what it's doing is it's saying, hey, that purchase order PDF file already exists. What do you want to have happen here? I'm going to actually choose the append on the first one. And on the second one, I'm going to choose overwrite. And then let me go show you what happened as a result of that. And once again, we see those emails go out. All right. Popping over to my Intercontinental, this is the one where I told it to append. And if I open this screen, you'll notice that there are 2 pages here. So this is a great example of how you could print a PDF of your purchase order, and then after discussing with the vendor the price changes, making those changes, you could print that purchase order again, and what you would see is page 1, if you hit append, page 1 would be your original purchase order, and page 2 would be the modifications that you made. So it's a great way to keep track of the changes that you've made and the agreements that you've come to with your vendor. If you happen to print that PO for a very good reason for the second time and no changes were made, that's where the overwrite functionality comes into play. On this one, I chose overwrite instead of append, and as you'll see, all I've got is page 1. I could have also hit cancel and not created that PDF file. And once again, you're seeing purchase order emails come in for me here. And because I did it twice, I've got them twice here. I will pop this open, again, just so you can see my beautiful little email body. And if I open the PDF, again, you see my beautiful PDF. The one thing I hope you've noticed throughout is we have the ability to do color in these PDFs. So notice that the logo is showing in color. I've got some clients who have really used this in an amazing fashion to continue to market their company's concepts and ideas to their clients. So at this point, we have gone through just hitting one button and having PrintBoss do it all. We've talked about some emailing and faxing and the HTML email body. I still have to hit these new features. I promise I will get there. We've talked about the PDF files. And then this last one, really, I have to apologize a little bit because I think it's because I'm a Crystal Reports and PrintBoss nerd that this one is exciting to me. It may not be as exciting to you in the presentation. It truly was one of those situations where the customers came to me and said, here's what we want you to do. And I went, okay, not really sure I'm actually going to do that for you. So I'm actually going into AR invoices, and I'm going to print 2 invoices from accounts receivable. I want invoice number 60 and 61 here. Now, the company that I did this for is an investment house. And so as you can imagine, security is a very important thing to them. And if you look at their invoice, I'm assuming that you've probably never seen an invoice that looked quite like this from Sage 300 before. First of all, what they're doing for invoices is they're talking to their customers about what they've invested and how their investments are doing and transactions that they've done with their stocks and portfolios, etc. And so this looks wildly different than probably what you're used to. And what I want you to notice is, first off, what we've done in Crystal is we have grouped the information by customer. So black is one of the customers and BMT is another customer. And if I flip down into the little side over here, you'll see that I have one invoice for each of these customers that I printed. But when you look at these invoices, you'll notice that they're actually, each one is 3 pages long. Again, because of the way that the customer wanted those formatted. So it's a 3-page long document. And then what happens at the end of that document is an additional page of information that we're going to use. So those first 4 pages all had to do with the black customer, and then these next 4 pages have to do with BMT. And again, we flip through and look at these invoices, and we can see that email at the end. So let me show you what it's doing when we send it to PrintBoss. All right. So again, email. If you get nothing else out of that from PrintBoss today, I hope you realize we can email, because I feel like I've hit that a lot. What this customer wanted us to do was they wanted to be able to print an entire batch of invoices, and they might have multiple invoices for a single customer. And they said, I want you to take all of those invoices and send them as one PDF to the customer. So we've got our Acme highly secure emails coming in here. So this is the first one that customer would receive. And as you'll notice, it's got a PDF attachment, and it says, here are your invoices. If I double click on this, notice that the PDF file is actually asking me for a password. So I can't view that attachment until I've entered the correct password. This customer was very concerned about security, but they were also concerned about ease of use for their customers. They were a little worried that because they only send invoices out every quarter, the customer wasn't going to remember what their password was the next time a statement came in. And so what we're doing is we're sending out a secondary email where basically all it says is, hey, by the way, your password is black. And so if I go back to that first email, double click on it, and open it and type in the password black and hit OK, ta-da, all of a sudden I can see my invoice. There are probably 50 small little features like that in PrintBoss that I am not able to hit in a lunch and learn session. So just so you're aware of them. Let me quick jump in and hit those new features that I keep promising I'm going to mention to you. Again, these are hot off the presses. They are so new to me that I actually had a customer come to me 2 months ago and they said, we want to use Office 365. We're not going to install it on our workstations. We just want to use it in the cloud on the web, basically log in, and we want PrintBoss to still send out our direct deposits for employee payroll. And I actually said to them, I'm so sorry, Outlook has to be on your machine if you're going to use it. And a month later found out, hey, by the way, they have actually added features here. So if I go into options and email settings where we set up our email, you'll notice there's a little checkbox right here where we can send email directly through the user's Outlook. We even have the ability to pick which Outlook profile we want it to use. So if you want it to say orders at happyretirementhome.com when it sends out emails, we can do that. But notice that the brand new features that have just come out is they now hook to Gmail, which is thoroughly a web email, and they also hook to Office 365. Again, what I love about the PrintBoss people is they are wonderful about not being content and just sitting on their laurels and being happy with what the software does today. They're constantly adding features to it. And really wonderfully, well, I'm assuming you've been wonderfully patient because I've actually had you muted. Please feel free to contact us. Our 866 number is on there. Again, my name is Sue Herman. My extension is 302 at Frontline Systems. But again, call anybody, any of your Frontline Systems representatives. They can answer your questions, and if they can't, they can get you to me.